Go ahead and do it
Where do you write it?
right underneath it.
A10.
Okay, so I'll give you an example. One of them for A is -2, 0. Write the other one. Okay, then do it for B and do it for C. So tell me what the x-intercepts are is what I'm looking for. When you're done and done only, look up. Please don't cheat yourself. I just write up the answers up here so you can check your answers, not for you to copy it. Okay, so make sure you just check and see how you did. Once you are done, give you another couple seconds here. Those are my x-intercepts. It's where it crosses the x-axis.
You've glitter on your face.
Do you have questions on that? Pretty straightforward, right? Okay, it says the x-intercepts of the graph of the parabola represent the zeros of the function. Zeros and x-intercepts mean the same thing. Zeros just mean about function, and x-intercepts mean the graphs. So if I ask you for the x-intercepts, you'd be looking for the point where it crosses the, like an ordered pair. The zeros are what you've been doing for a couple weeks now. So the past couple weeks you've been doing these factoring and you've been finding these answers. That's what you're figuring out. Every time you do a factoring problem like you did on Friday and all last week, say you got the answer of 2. That's telling you where it crosses on the x-axis. If I told you if you got your answer of 2, you'd be telling me that that's where it's crossing the x-axis. That's what it means to find a zero. That's what you're doing when you're factoring. Okay, so we saw this dreaded quadratic formula last week, but I'm telling you it's so much easier today because we're only going to take a piece of it. So there is something called the discriminant, and it's a piece of the quadratic formula that tells you what type and what kind of zeros. So what type and how many actually. So I'm going to take my highlighter and I'm going to highlight this piece right here. That's called the discriminant. That piece of the quadratic formula is going to be able to tell you how many zeros you have, how many times it crosses the x-axis, and what kind. Are they real or imaginary? So how many and what type. There are only 3 options. You can either have 2 real, 2 imaginary, or 1 real. They're the only 3 options you have for the rest of the day today. Okay? So if we look back at our example up here, again, 2 real, 1 real, 2 imaginary, because it doesn't cross at all. And we'll get more into that in a second here. Okay. So here's our discriminant formula, b squared minus 4ac, just a little part that's underneath the radical. If it is greater than 0, if you type in the calculator and you get a number that's positive, you're going to have 2 real zeros. So that's kind of a trick for you. It's called the discriminant. By taking the discriminant, you can figure out how many and what type of zeros you have. So if you type it in your calculator and you get a positive answer, then you know that you're going to have 2 real zeros, which looks something like this. It could look like it's upside down 2, but it crosses twice. You can see that here. It crosses 1 and 2 times. Okay, now we have imaginary zeros. That's like letter C in the warm-up. If it's less than 0 or negative, that's what that means, then you're going to have 2 imaginary zeros. 2, and that could look something like this, where it doesn't cross at all. Not once. Okay? Think of it as real as you can see it. I can actually see them on the graph. They're right here. I can point to them. Imaginary, they're not there. You don't see it cross at all. That's what it means to be imaginary. Now, imaginary numbers are really just in a different dimension. It does actually cross. It's just a different dimension. And I will explain that another day. Imaginary numbers are actually pretty interesting. Okay, then we have when it equals 0. So if you type in your calculator and it equals 0, you're going to have 1 real 0. And that's usually like at your vertex or something, like that. And you can see here it only crosses 1 time. And that's why it's 1 real. You can see it, you can visually see it cross the x-axis, and that's why it's only 1. Okay, so that's just something that you have to refer to back and forth on the next page. Flip when you're ready. Okay, it's pretty easy. Make sure you have a calculator ready to go. Okay. So just like we did with the quadratic formula, you gotta figure out what they are. My A value is -3, my B is 2, and my C is -1. On the top of my page, I'm gonna rewrite my discriminant formula so that I don't have to keep looking back and forth. So we're just gonna plug it in. Here we go. What was B?
2.
Yeah, 2 squared minus 4 times A times C. Well, what's A? And what's C? Thank you. Okay? So go ahead and type that in your calculator. Right like that. We practiced doing this when we did quadratic formula. So go ahead and type it in and I can help you out. For the first one, I have 2 squared minus 4 times, is it -3 or -1? I don't remember. You guys gotta help me out. Was it -3? -3, close it up, and then -1. When you press enter, you get -8. That is your discriminant. That's what it's called. So your discriminant is -8. Now I told you earlier you have 3 options to answer this. Okay, so the 3 options you have: 2 real, 2 imaginary, or 1 real root. Okay? And because it's negative, you have a negative, this is just for notes, you don't have to write this down every single time you do on the homework. Okay? Because it's negative, how many and what type of zeros do I have based off of the chart that we made earlier? If I have a negative discriminant,
Imaginary.
I have 2 imaginary zeros, and that's it.
You get -4.
What's up?
You get -4.
The 4 is part of the problem. It's part of the formula.
How do you get 2 squared?
2 squared, so we're just plugging it right into this formula right here. So I take the 2 and I plug it in, I get 2 squared minus 4, because that's part of the formula. A, which is -3, and C, which is -1. Okay? Yep. So just like doing that quadratic formula, but we're only doing a piece of it. So again, the only 3 options you have: 2 real, 2 imaginary, 1 real. The only 3 things you should be writing down as your answer. All right, let's do it again. So again, I have B squared minus 4AC. So what is A?
Wait, it was that easy.
Yeah, it's not a hard problem. These are actually pretty easy. It's pretty straightforward. What's A?
A equals
1 over 2. Here's where people sometimes get confused. What's B? 1. Thank you. Someone said X last period because they just assume that you're never going to be using letters here. You're only going to be using numbers. Then in blue, I have C is -1/2 as well. I'm going to help you type this in because you're working with fractions. Something I will tell you is that whenever you see a slash or a fraction, that just means division. Okay, so let's type it in together, or just make sure you're following along with me. So I have 1 squared minus 4 parentheses -1 divided by 2. Close it up. Open it up again. -1 divided by 2. Close it up. Press enter. And if you got 0, you did it right. If you didn't, please let me know and I'll come and look at your calculator.
Can you go back to the screen, please?
In a second, there are people who are trying to type in the calculator. Did anyone not get 0? Okay, cool. So you got 0. That's your discriminant. Now, that discriminant is going to tell, oh, I didn't write it out yet. So let me write it out. I have 1 squared minus 4 times -1/2 times -1/2. And when you guys put that in the calculator, you got 0. So when you do this problem, all you're doing is you're analyzing your answer. I got the answer of 0. What does that tell me based off my chart? Sorry. What'd you say? Is it how many? 1. Okay, 1 real, 0, and we're done. Again, the only options you have: 2 real, 1 real, 2 imaginary. And here you're just talking about where it crosses on the x-axis. It's a kind of a trick. You can always 100%, when you get your graphing calculator on the test, if you 100% forget how to do this, use your skills. type this in the graphing calculator and tell me how many times it crosses. Okay, you could do it that way too, but I'm showing you the algebraic way to do it. Okay, I want you guys to do 3 and see how you do. Please do number 3 and see what you do. Give 3 a shot. You're just plugging it into that discriminant formula, b squared minus 4ac.
Wait,
Now be careful. You need to make sure that you have. Okay, Miss Summers is right over here. She moved classes. She's in my 4th hour now. Be careful. Make sure when you put that -5 squared in your calculator, you don't just put -5 squared. Whenever you're working with a negative number, make sure you put it in parentheses. So, what I mean by that is -5 all squared minus 4 times 2 times -6. Good, just make sure you put that -5 in parentheses. So a lot of people are putting that -5 without parentheses. That's going to give you a -25, but -5 times -5 is positive 25. So you have to be careful when you put in your calculator. Maybe highlight that so that you don't forget. Make sure that you put that in there. What'd you guys get as your discriminant?
73.
Yeah. Did anyone not get 73? Wants me to come and check it out. Woo! Okay, so what happened is this guy, you just need to use a minus sign.
That's why
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so be careful with those calculators. They're great, but you gotta make sure you know how to use them. So this is a positive answer. I got a positive discriminant,
so it's 2 real.
so it's 2 real is my answer. Positive. Okay, so again, those are the only 3 options. 2 real, 1 real, and 2.
Are we gonna have those like on a moment?
Yeah, it's easy. Easy peasy. You should finish it before you leave. Okay, so now, let's kind of, sorry, I didn't mean to scroll down that far. Okay, it says, the fundamental theorem of algebra. There is something called the fundamental theorem of algebra. It is a definition. You don't have to memorize it. But what it says is, whatever your degree is, so like x squared is 2, then you should have that many roots. You should have that many zeros. It should cross the x-axis that many times. But that's not the situation in the cases that we just talked about. There were some that were 1. So a quadratic should have 2, but on the one on the right, it only has 1. Okay, so we're right here filling in that. It says that we should have 2, but we only have 1. There is a 0. What is the 0? What is that number? -3. It's called a double root. So if that's ever a situation where you have the vertex on the x-axis, it's called a double root, or sometimes people call it a multiplicity of 2, either one. But I'll give you an example. On the Khan Academy, which a lot of you were working really hard on that on Friday. Don't write this down, I'm just giving you an example. You got something like this, x minus 5 times x minus 5, and Khan Academy asked for only one answer. And you gave x equals 5. You gave that answer on Khan. That's what that is, a double root. When that situation happens, that's called a double root. All right, so now let's do an example. Here, we want to find the vertex, and we want to find if it's concave up or down.
You go back.
I said that you didn't have to write that down. I was just giving you an example. You got to listen, kid. All right, so we have our vertex formula. Does anyone remember what the vertex is here from way back? Go ahead.
Positive 4, negative.
Careful.
Positive 3.
There we go, positive 3 and
Negative 4.
-4. Okay, so going way back to couple weeks ago, this is our vertex formula. 3, -4 is our vertex. Are we going to concave up or concave down? See if you remember that. down. So I'm gonna put like a little, oopsie, sorry guys. We're gonna be concave, down. Just writing these notes for your notes. Again, you don't have to write this down when you're doing these problems. It's just for the sake of notes that you remember how we did this. So let's go ahead and sketch a graph. 3, 1, 2, 3, down, 1, 2, 3, 4 is my vertex. And it says I'm concave down, so there we go. Again, you have 3 options. Is it 2 real, 2 imaginary, or 1 real root in this situation? 2 imaginary. It does not cross the x-axis. So 2 imaginary, and we're done. Now, if you were like on the test and you totally forgot how to do that, get out your graphing calculator, press y equals. Type this in. You could get your graph and figure it out. Okay, so all of these you can put right in the calculator 100%, but try to do it without one, and then if you get stuck, that's when you bust out the calculator. Okay, so what's the vertex of this one? Yeah, it's the same thing. 3, -4, same thing. But now are we concave up or down? Careful. Up. This guy in front tells you if you're concave up or down. There's a positive there, technically, or there's no negative. So we're going to go up. So same thing. 1, 2, 3, down. 1, 2, 3, 4 right here. But this time, we're going up, up, up. So how many do we have? 1 real, 2 real, or 2 imaginary? Only 1 time it crosses? 2. Do you see that? So again, the difference is can you visually see it? Like I take my eyes, I open them, and I count 1, 2. It crosses twice. So it has 2 real zeros. That's supposed to be an R. Almost done? You're gonna have a lot of time for your homework. Okay, what is the vertex of this one? Be careful. Someone other than Ryan. Nope. 3 what? Yeah, very good. 3, 0, because look, it doesn't go up or down anything. There's nothing there. If you want to write +0 there for yourself, you can, but there's nothing there. And that's why we're going up 0. Now, are we concave up or down? Down. Very good. Because of this guy is telling me down. So let's go ahead and graph it. 1, 2, 3, 0, and I go down. So yes, like Riley said, it's 1 real. Again, you can tell that by how many times it crosses. 1, 2, 1. Again, if you get stuck, go to y equals, type it in, and you can just get the graph without even thinking. But please try it first without. Before I have you guys do your homework, I'm going to make sure that you're understanding how to do it. So, whenever you have room somewhere on your paper, if you can find space anywhere, maybe like you have space up here. Some of you do. I want you to type it, I want you to find the same thing. I want you to tell me the same thing. How many and what type of zeros do I have here? Use your discriminant. Use the same formula. If you need it, b squared minus 4ac. Once you find it, let me know. I'll give you your homework. So again, that's what you're doing. The same thing is up here. Plug it in. Tell me how many and what kind. There's only 3 options. 2 real, 1 real.
Is that already pretty
Huh? No, you're going to have to actually write that out. So this is a new problem. I totally made it up. I want you to try this to get your homework. If you get it right, you get your homework. If you don't, I'll walk you through it. Do the same thing as you did up here. Okay? So I gave you this new problem. Go ahead and give it a go. And then you have like 20, 30